Okay, we're going to be joined in just a moment. We're going to be joined by the Republican leader. At least we're planning on it. Kevin McCarthy, the House right now in the midst of voting on this proposal by the Democrats to create this 9/11 type commission investigating the events of January the 6th. Now, the Republican leader in the House and the Senate, Mitch McConnell in the Senate, both have come out saying they are encouraging Republicans to vote against this. It's unnecessary. And, you know, the concern I have about this is that it is putting what happened on January the 6th, which I've repeatedly denounced. I think it was the folks that did that. And I know I've heard people have been offended by it, but I think they were idiots. That's not how you do things in this country. And as far as being an insurrection, wasn't an insurrection. If it was the most, make sure I choose my words carefully, the most ill-planned insurrection in the history of the world. It was an act of mob violence. In fact, it was the same type of violence that we saw happen throughout the country over the course of the year. It just so happened this time, it happened to be those, I think, at least most of them, on the other side of the political aisle than what we've seen with Antifa and Black Lives Matter burning and looting cities. Why aren't we having a commission investigating that? Why are we not looking into the violence of the left and the efforts they were engaged in? This is all about politics. This is connected to the mask. It's connected to the whole agenda of fear and control. It's why the city of DC continues to look like an armed camp, even though all of the private entities like ours have taken down the boards after the rioting and the looting of last summer, relatively safe now that they're not protesting Donald Trump. But yet when all of the private entities were taking down the boards and the barricades, oddly enough, they started going up around the Capitol. Not that there was a threat, but it made for great theater. That's what this is about. This is about theater. It's about creating a narrative, being aided by the media, playing along with them. Because when you create fear, it's easier to control. And I'm grateful that we have Republicans that are pushing back on this and saying, we're not going to be a part of your charade, that we're not going to be props in your play to scare the American people and to manipulate our country. I think we're going to be joined by, but first, I want to bring in one of our team members that has been tracking this more closely. Connor, well, we do have the leader now, so we're going to go straight to the leader. Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy, the Republican leader in the House. As I said, they're voting right now on this 9/11 style commission to investigate the January the 6th. Leader McCarthy, are you with us?
I'm with you, Tony. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely, Kevin. Okay, the vote's actually going to be taking place here momentarily. It's being debated right now. You and your counterpart in the Senate, Mitch McConnell, have said Republicans should oppose this. Tell our listeners why.
Yeah, they should oppose it because it's duplicate. It's designed politically. There are already 2 committees in the Senate investigating this on a bipartisan basis, and they'll have a report out in a couple weeks. You got the Department of Justice has already arrested 445 people. That is the correct place to go, law enforcement, to look at if somebody had done something wrong, which they had, and arrested them and investigate. And then you have the architect of the Capitol was given $10 million to examine how the Capitol could be more secure. So you got 4 different entities already doing this. And when you watch what the Democrats have put together, they set it up where only Democrat staff would staff this. This really looks like duplicate. It looks like it's politics being played by Pelosi. We want to get to the bottom of it. We want to get to the bottom of it, but we want to get to the bottom of it for the simple fact that we want to know what's gone wrong, how do we make sure it never happens again? But also the scope of it. You had on Good Friday another officer killed, but Nancy Pelosi doesn't want to investigate why that happened or how can we make sure that never happens again. So for all those bases, I'm opposed to it.
I mean, Leader McCarthy, it's kind of hard to escape the politics of this. I mean, this came as a bookend to a year of violence and all across America, the streets of America, looting, burning. Just so happened that was people primarily on the other side of the political aisle. It was the left, Black Lives Matter, Antifa that was doing that. Granted, it was not the U.S. Capitol, but it was U.S. court buildings, courthouses in Portland. So why not the intensive investigation into those events, but only this one?
You know, that's a very good question. I raised that to the speaker. Why wouldn't we look at the events that took place rising up to this day, and what happened afterwards? We see that still happening in Portland today. We've watched it happen in many of the federal buildings across the country. I personally, for one, would like to know the answer to it and the solution to stop it so it will not happen again. But Speaker Pelosi wants to just have a scope only of January 6th.
And to be clear, I have denounced it. I think it was just ludicrous for people to do that. It was, as I said, it wasn't
They should all
earlier
be
before
held
you.
accountable.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, and they are, as you said, over 400 have been arrested for that. But what I think most of us see this as it's being treated differently than the lawlessness that swept across the country for an entire year. And this is about political theater. And I'm so grateful that the Republican leadership is standing up and saying, we're not going to be props in your play.
That's exactly correct. I mean, think about that statue over by the Supreme Court. She's blinded. And she's blinded because that's the way law should be. Law should be fair, equal with the scale that she holds. And everyone should be held accountable. So anyone who broke in and did wrong on that January 6th should be held accountable. But who's best to investigate that? The people who do it for a living. The FBI, they're out there arresting people. They're doing the research behind it. And what's really concerning about this group that Pelosi wants to put together, they don't put anything in the writing that would make sure that they don't hamper what the FBI is already doing. But what about all the other things that have gone through for the last summer that were political riots and others to federal buildings? Why wouldn't we look at that as well?
I just had on, and I think it's related to this, I just had on Dr. Andy Harris of Maryland, and I know you've joined with the Doctors Caucus in pushing back on the mask rules that Nancy Pelosi has put in place. I mean, almost every member of the House is vaccinated. According to the CDC, once you're vaccinated, you don't have to wear the mask. To me, this smacks of nothing but raw political power that we see over and over again from the speaker. And I think Americans are looking, at least conservative Americans like myself, are looking for exactly what you're doing. And that is pushing back and saying enough is enough.
I've actually put a privilege resolution on the floor we're voting on right now. It simply says, and it's so embarrassing, whereas if you're in the House of Representatives, in that chambers, you have to wear a mask. But if you walk over to the Senate, you don't have to wear a mask. The doctor actually gave a different letter to the senators than to the House. And it's all because Nancy Pelosi wants greater control. If you follow the science, CDC tells us we don't need to wear our masks. But because Pelosi wants to have to control everybody, she's enforcing. And if you take your mask off, they charge you $200 or $500. And the second time you charge $2,500.
You've been around a while. We've seen this different names, but kind of the same play. Well, actually, the speaker was there back in 2009. When Barack Obama was president, pushing through Obamacare. There was a massive overreach. I don't think it was as aggressive in terms of raw power that we're seeing today, but the American people responded. Are you hopeful that you'll see a similar response in the midterm elections in less than 2 years from now?
I believe we are. I'm seeing it right now, the frustration. And the sad part, some of the reasons why we're seeing it, because we're seeing a government that looks like Jimmy Carter is president again. The gasoline lines, the inflation, the unrest in the Middle East, the lack of leadership with America to make the world safer. And this didn't have to be. This is just within 5 months what President Biden and then the movement of the Democratic Party to this socialist agenda. I'm hearing not just from Republicans, but independents and Democrats who are disgusted by this.
Yeah, and the economy has a profound impact on the way people view their condition. I mean, obviously, if you're not, there are other factors, but if you're having to pay more, inflation is going up, your gas prices cost more, you don't have a job because a pipeline was canceled, and all of the domino effect of that. I mean, that's what we see under the policy. I'm shocked every time I go to the gas pump that it continues to rise, and he's only been there 4 months.
You know, we haven't seen the national gas price like that since the last time he was in office as vice president. And think about what he's done. He's only empowered and made Russia stronger, our adversaries. He's cut American jobs. We're energy independent. Now we're getting Russian oil into America. We're getting hacked and having lines where gasoline stations have no gasoline. He's ignoring the border that he's opened up, and now there's terrorists walking across the border that we're catching on the terrorist watch list. I sent a letter to the director of the FBI and CIA, and I just got a response. It's classified, so I can't talk about the things that are in it. But the one thing I will tell you, I want every leader to be able to read that letter because it is scary. It's worse than what I thought. When I first went to the border and I came back after speaking to the border agents, that they're catching people not just from Central America, but from Yemen, from more than 100 different countries, but they're on our terrorist watch list. When I made that statement, I thought other members of Congress would join with me to try to protect the border. The Democrats called me a liar. And now what we're finding out, it's worse than I even imagined. Why are they coming here? Who's bringing them? Who are they meeting? What do they have planned? Why wouldn't the president or the vice president go down to the border and see what they've created? I mean, what's happening is in the border is a dereliction of duty. And the vice president won't even go to see it. The president has created this with their own executive actions. To me, it's one of our greatest threats as a nation.
It is. I was there about a year ago, back when it was like a ghost town because of the policies of the Trump administration. The illegal crossings had almost completely stopped, primarily because the Border Patrol agents weren't babysitting and having to process. They were actually out on the border, protecting the border. Now, with this influx of illegals coming across, along with the unaccompanied minors, they're all tied up and no one's watching the border.
There are some elements of the border that 40% of the agents that would be along the border protected can't be there because they're in taking care of the unaccompanied children. These are the individuals that Joe Biden told them to come on in, to bring here. We're going to have more than 1 million people illegally enter the border. But the question is, when you're catching people on the terrorist watch list, how many people and terrorists are you not catching? Where are they going? What do they have planned?
Very good question. I want to ask one final question, and this is another foreign policy question as it pertains to Israel and what is happening there right now. I mean, during the Trump administration, all these predictions because he was moving the embassy, because of recognizing the sovereignty of Israel over the Golan Heights, so there was to be violence. The opposite was the case. We had peace accords, but just three to 4 months into this administration, we have the most intense violence we've had in 2 decades.
And you know what's changed? An administration, a president who now talks to Iran, who provides people with the missiles to shoot at Israel. And then what's even worse, you got a Democratic Party that criticizes Israel for sending up the Iron Dome to knock out the rockets that are coming at them. Could you imagine someone sending rockets into America and we couldn't respond and we'd be criticized for protecting our own citizens?
Yeah.
It's appalling that the Democrats believe this.
Absolutely. Kevin McCarthy, we're going to have to leave it there. We're out of time. I want to thank you for joining us, and I want to thank you for pushing back on the left. I think there's a lot of us conservatives out there that are grateful for it.
Thank you, Tony. I appreciate all the work you do, and all the conservatives out there. Stay with us. We're fighting because this country matters, and we're going to win, and we're going to turn it back around. We're going to make sure the next century is the American century. Thank you so much.